Hi, welcome to What Happens Next from Shreya Nagarajan Singh Arts Development Consultancy, where we speak to artists, performers, creative people from various disciplines about their work, how they are managing during the coronavirus lockdown, and where they see things going. Today, our guest is Carola Winnie. Carola is an architect, interior and furniture designer based in Chennai. She's the co-founder and principal designer at Madras Makers, along with Prem Balasubramanian. Madras Makers are known for their fine hardwood furniture and bespoke architecture and interiors. I came across Madras Makers in Architectural Digest a few years ago and really liked what I saw, so I reached out to them. I think this was back in 2017. Their furniture really blew me away, and then when we met, we had a really nice conversation, and I've been hoping to keep in touch with them going forward. It was pretty nice to see their furniture show up in various projects that I have shot, so it's clear that architects really like their work too. So I thought speaking to a furniture designer gave me a different perspective on furniture, which is something I was already interested in. So I thought that would be a good time to bring Carola into what happens. Hi, Carola.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, good. It's nice catching up. It's been a while, I guess.
It really has, and it looks like the only way we seem to be catching up these days is for video.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah. So let's just jump right into it as quickly as possible. Okay. Carola, you guys are in a unique position from most people because you're not only an architect or and a designer, but you also manufacture whatever you design. So you manufacture it yourself in your own factory, right? So
Yes.
can you just tell us a little bit about how your setup is and how you typically work?
Yeah. So we broadly have two segments to how we work. So we have a design team and we have the factory of the makers. Okay. So the factory is a sort of a much larger setup in terms of the real estate area itself. We have carpenters, polishers, cutters, and we have a team that manages them. All right. So the factory in itself has a lot of processes involved, right? You need to streamline a lot of work in the sense so that work happens in a certain kind of way as smoothly as possible, and things happen in a certain sequence so that we achieve whatever we want to make in the stipulated amount of time we have, right? Design, on the other hand, is a slightly more, what do I call it? It's a creative sort of a setup. So there are a lot of impromptu things happening. Creative ideas come from, inspiration comes from anywhere. So we would be having a library of, ideas that we've already thought of. And at the same time, there are a lot of presentations happening on what would actually work for certain customers who approach us. And there are projects where we conceive the entire house per se, So there is everything right from the macro right to the micro happening in that sort of work. So that way, the kind of setup we have is very dynamic. There is a lot of things to be thought about, and there's always a lot of creativity happening where I work, So.
Okay. Well, that's the best kind of workspace.
Yeah.
How many people do you have on your team?
So currently we are about 22 people.
Okay.
I'm talking about the entire team, our designers and carpentry team and everything, everybody put together.
Okay. And so when you were saying that you have a factory and you have a design team,
Yes.
during the lockdown, I assume that your factory obviously you wouldn't have been able to function, right?
Yeah.
So how was that part of your team handling it? How were they coping, and what were they able to do?
So, as with most organizations, we had closed down our operations for a good 60 days.
Sure.
And of course, we were working, the design team was alive virtually. So we would be doing calls through Zoom and WhatsApp. We would exchange designs through, the cell phone is a good enough tool to exchange whatever you need to exchange. So the design work has been going on through this period. But of course, we've not been able to produce anything during this time. So what we've done is we use this time to, in fact, structure a lot of things, because the design team to the production team needs to have a really good connect so that work happens as streamlined as possible. So in fact, every day we're trying to, only get this better, to make this relationship between the design and the production team better. So I think this lockdown, in fact, has given us that leverage of time, and we've done, we're making as much effort as possible to resolve as many issues as possible at the design stage itself, right? Not per se, not just drawing a piece of furniture or detailing it to the core. Not that's just one aspect of it, but in fact, being able to explain something to a carpenter without having to humanly interact. If you can give them a set of very simplified, absolutely no nonsense set of documents which you can share with the carpenter, who still, most of our carpenters are not from a really educated background, so to say, right? They read numbers, they read letters, and mostly they're fluent with Tamil, not so much with English. So we want to be able to get that communication set right.
Okay.
That's something we've been working on during this lockdown. It's something we wanted to do for a very long time, but this period, since you're fairly not under much of pressure to deliver things at a particular deadline, so to say, we've used that time to actually streamline that part of our process, our work process.
And
as
sorry,
far as the factory,
if I may interrupt you for a second. I know there will be a lot of people who are watching this who may not have been able to make that sort of connect happen between their teams. How did you manage it? Especially when you say one of your teams is not as tech savvy as the other would have been. So how did you manage that? How did you bring that connect together?
See, to very simply put it, design is quite organic, sometimes radical, right? Whereas production is something more empirical, right? You're dealing with numbers, you're dealing with dimensions. So I think between design and production, it's very important to tie these two things. The more sort of radical, the whole design part of it, where you might just very impulsively draw a curve and then work your way up from there to build a furniture. When it comes to actual production, you need to think in terms of how the carpenter will actually be able to make it, right? You need to think about the tooling, right? You need to think about the kind of sections of wood that is available, and the skill set of the carpenter itself. Okay, so while you're trying to actually get these two to work synchronously, it's important to, as much as you have a creative impulse to do whatever you'd like to do, it is important to actually engage with the production team also to see how pragmatic this is, or how you can make what you create pragmatic, right? So while this is one part of the activity, how you communicate what you're drawing is also very, very important. You cannot have missing dimensions. You cannot have what do I say? You can't leave anything to chance, right? You have to notate. You have to be very, very.
Precise.
What is the word? You have to be very precise. You have to be very articulate about what you're trying to communicate to the carpenter, communicate to the maker, right? Because if there is any point where he does not understand what you've drawn, he's going to scratch his head. He will come back and ask you, right?
Yes, of
So,
course.
in fact, in the last, we're an establishment for the last 7 years. So, this has been quite the learning that we've had. And we've been trying to get this to bridge this gap that we've had for a long time. And we're trying to make that better and better and better every day.
Okay. And I think this is also probably a good time to jump into something else that I've been wanting to ask you for quite a while.
Yeah.
Is that you do two types of design, right? You design furniture, but you also design architecture and interior.
Yes.
How different is your approach between the two? Because I get the feeling, I mean, like you clearly describe what it's like to design furniture, where you have to look at it from how the maker is going to actually tool and execute it, right? So,
Yes.
is that very different from designing interiors or an architecture or a building itself? Or is that also similar except it's different tools?
To very simply put it, the principles of design are the same, whether it is a building or it is just a room that you're addressing or it's a piece of furniture. But
Right.
what changes across these different scales is how you really approach. So when you're actually designing a piece of furniture, you fairly know within what are your dimensional constrictions, right? So you know a dining table, how big, how large it's going to be. It's probably going to be an 8x3 or a 7x3. Sort of a platform within which you design. So
Sure.
when it comes to a piece of furniture, you're working more on the detailed aspects of it, right? You're working in terms of the structure, in terms of the aesthetic, in terms of proportion, and while that is the broader spectrum of the design, you also try and understand how each piece fits into what. Okay,
Yeah.
and all of this is in fact completely designed before it goes for production.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So, in my experience, what I have encountered between furniture and designing for a space is probably very as simple as this. So, let's say on interior design, you take a CAD file, and if you're working on something, a rectangle is a perfect rectangle. You're working within a sort of a perfect geometry. You're assuming a perfect geometry to put whatever you would like to design in that space. When
Yes.
it actually comes to an interior space, you would encounter some more challenges with which the site itself may pose to you.
Sure.
So, simple things like just straightening out walls, right? So if I should draw a relationship between something that's designed in the factory to something that the same object that needs to go into an interior space, right? So let's say a kitchen or a wardrobe.
Yeah.
So a kitchen is constructed in perfect orthogonality, right? A 90-degree is a 90-degree because we constructed in the factory. But when it's actually moved to a site, you have the walls to take care of. You have floor and ceiling undulations. So all of these pose certain constrictions, although you might have drawn it perfectly on a CAD drawing, so to
Yeah.
say that your kitchen perfectly fits, but the interior
That's
itself
obvious.
might pose some challenges. So I'm speaking to you from a completely practical point of view, right? So that is probably what the broader differences that we have encountered in terms of designing an interior space to furniture design. But otherwise, in terms of how you address furniture design and interior design, they're pretty much the same. It's important to have the right sense of ergonomics, ratio and proportioning. You need to use the right materials, colors, the feel of light. Light is actually a very important part of how
Yes.
it renders a space and a product.
Yeah.
Right. And how something is placed within a space. Right. That would in fact even command how a product is designed. So there's sometimes a dining table, for example, you might get a very good vantage point to be able to see it linearly. So you can actually see the length of the table. So you can see the 8-foot part of the table. So there you think about how, the perfect kind of a dining table that would sit there, whether it's a 3-leg or a simple straight leg table. But at the same time, if you're going to see the shorter part of the table, you're going to address that differently, right?
Yeah.
So these are some of the very important aspects of both interior design and furniture design. You can't really isolate them and say furniture design is done in a particular way, interior design is done in a particular way. All of these have a lot of common ties within them to, in fact, make a space feel great.
Yeah, and I think that's a pretty great answer, because this would cover, I mean, it's also very similar to how people would ask me, could we do architecture and industrial photography? People would ask me, what's the difference in shooting between the two? Again, how different is the approach? Photography remains the same, but there is a slight difference. So when I would like shoot in a factory shop floor for an architect, my approach is different from shooting a factory shop floor for the factory owner or for that company themselves. So, but it's nice to hear that there are subtle differences, but the approach remains similar.
Yes.
And how did you get into furniture design? I mean, you studied architecture, but how did you specifically did furniture design becoming one of your mainstays come organically to you, or was there another way you got funneled in?
See, furniture design, I would say, happened by chance, in fact, because I wasn't even really aware that I was being funneled into furniture design, because Prem and I, when we started out, we actually started with spatial design only, right? But in fact, the aspect of hardwood, the aspect of using reclaimed hardwood for building furniture actually started with Prem, so who's the founder of Madras Makers. So he, in fact, was looking to make good products for his parents' house back in 2010. So he was actually working as a lighting designer at that point of time, and when he was actually hunting for good furniture makers, he couldn't find out any. He got to doing this on his own. He bought some logs of wood. He got hold of a carpenter and started doing this in his garage on his own. So, and as I was I was freelancing at that point of time, and when I actually, started observing what he was doing, I was also very slowly but steadily, sort of drawn to it. And before you know it, you're actually part of that. So if you ask me if it was actually furniture design, it's a separate stream, or what is this, was it all so intimidating? I would say no, because that's the beauty of actually studying a course like architecture. And in fact broadens your perspective and gives you so much confidence that you can actually do anything you want, right? It just takes that much more involvement and what do I say? You just have to want to explore and learn everything you want to know about it, right? So, in fact, furniture design is something I would say if you have a good sense of scale and proportioning, and if you understand the materiality of what you're working with, so let's say it's wood that you're working with or metal that you're working with, then I think, or let's say even concrete or marble, people are making things with anything anything you can imagine today.
Yes,
So,
yes.
so if these are a few of these things, if you can actually pay attention to, I think you can actually make anything. So,
Yeah.
in fact, being able to make furniture has to a great extent liberated our creative senses. It's not like, I'm an architect, I will do just this, or I cannot design a space, I will only design a big space. There's nothing like that. I think every aspect of design, small or large, is important to making, the space that you live very important. To making the space that you live in very important. Yeah.
Yeah, I could not agree more. I have uh, I tried my hand at it, made a rickety bench, but it still works, especially for the cats in the garden. It works very well. So, how has your approach to your work changed since the first lockdown came into effect? Did you actually have any chance to prepare for the lockdown, before it was finally announced, or was there just not enough time to do it?
I think we were prepared to some extent that, we knew something of a lockdown was going to happen.
Right.
Because towards the end of, in fact, the third week of Feb, we realized that this was, in fact, a grave situation, and this is only going to accelerate.
Yeah.
So I actually had a meeting with, everybody in the factory and said that, something like this is going to happen. A situation called a lockdown will be announced by the government, wherein we may not be able to step out, and we might need to shut shop for a while,
Yeah.
but there's nothing to really worry. If this happens, it happens. But see, the thing is, nobody, in fact, thought this would be a 60-day affair. I had most thought this would be a 3-week sort of a break, and we would get back to things as if it were normal. But that wasn't really the case. But see, I think, in fact, we resumed operations since last week. In fact, for the last 10 days, we've been operational in very small numbers. So I'll make sure we have about 25% of the strength. So that's pretty much what we've been doing. In fact, even before the lockdown was announced, we thought that in case there is an issue like this, there will be very stringent measures taken by the government so as to make sure that people don't spread the infection around. So if such was the case, we would actually have to have people coming in smaller groups, finishing smaller tasks, and then making room for the next set of people. So, and that's exactly what we've been doing. We probably thought we would be doing this in 3 weeks, but just that this has happened after a much longer break. So yeah, that's.
And the people who work at your company, do most of them live in Madras, or do they live here?
All my entire team is actually from Madras.
Okay.
Just
So
that some of
everyone's
them
in town.
stay. Sorry.
So everyone is in town now.
Everyone is in town. Everyone is from town. Just that most of them were depending on public transport earlier. So, and some of them come from very far off, right? From Vandalur and, even Avadi. And so our factory is located in Ramapuram. So for some people, they travel as much as 20-25 kilometers to work. So, and most of them have to, jump 2-3 modes of transport to get to our office. So they take a train early in the morning, and then they jump to another bus, and then take a mini bus, and then come and then reach. So since the lockdown, I have made it very strict that, that just can't happen, right? You have to somehow find a way of coming to factory on your own. So that is when I actually even discovered that all of them have a vehicle, but they just wouldn't use it, right?
Okay.
So yeah, so this is in fact sort of made all of them use their own transport and somehow make their way. And to the advantage of most of them, they in fact reach our factory in half the time, or sometimes even less than how long it would take them in any other mode of transport, right?
And suppose the strain of driving would be reduced with slightly
Yeah, the
reduced
traffic is
traffic.
slightly lesser now,
Yeah.
and we are also working in early morning shifts, so they come before it really gets too hot. So they
Okay.
come, wrap up by lunch, and they go back home for lunch. So
Okay.
that,
That's good.
yeah, that's also something we've been doing. Yeah.
And is this a system that you're going to probably set in place for at least the next few months?
I think not just the next few months, but for a very long time. I think even my carpenters and my team per se is much more comfortable, with emphasizing the fact that they can't use public transport to come to the factory. They
Yeah.
have made sure they figure out their mode of transport, and right now they are a lot more comfortable with that, with the alternative. So even they may not go back and take the public transport, even if I ask them to. So
Okay. That's I think that's going to be an unexpected change for you guys to have.
yes, yes. Because see, there's one thing that I encourage my carpenters to do is, cut down the commute time. Put in
Yes.
put in more work time, because that is something that will monetize. That is actually beneficial to you. There's no point spending 3 hours, shunting and just exhausting yourself and not being able to do efficient work, right? If 3 hours is going to come down to 1 hour, you'll be able to put in those 2 hours, and it will actually be beneficial to both, the business and to them, right? So that is something I've been emphasizing. But maybe for the next 2 quarters at least, we may not be able to do too much of overtime work. We have to be restricted to a little bit of factory work timings. Maybe a 7 to 8 hour shift might is what would work for some time.
Yeah.
But I think if this COVID is behind us by end of the year, I think we'll get back on our feet to as normal as it was by Jan.
Okay. So let's hope that happens. Um, I think now is a good time to shift tracks a little bit, and I want to just ask you something about the customer experience. So how do all this time, how have customers been, trying out your furniture before they place an order or customize or buy? Because I guess that's a very big part. It's like trying on clothes, trying on furniture, right? Except that you're probably
That's
going to
right.
use it for generations rather than just a few years. So
Absolutely.
have they been trying out your furniture before? Do you have a showroom? And how will they try it out in the future when probably you'll need to limit the number of people who can visit you, or keeping distancing at least for the next few months. So what's the difference you expect to have?
So we don't have a retail outlet as of now. We have a walk-in factory. So if there is an inquiry right up to before the lockdown situation, I can explain to you how things were. But, so if there was someone keen on looking at, the kind of, they want to actually get a touch and feel of the product, we invite them to our factory. So
Okay.
they can actually see finished products. They can see how we work. We actually tour them, through the entire factory. So that's how it used to be. But we've also had clients who, you know, we've had clients from Pan India, where we had clients from, we've had customers from Delhi where, they wouldn't be able to come all the way to Chennai, or, unless there was a situation for them to come. So a large bit of it works with trust. You know, they've seen our work on, several platforms like Instagram and Facebook. We share catalogs across emails, and before we actually start making a product for them, in case they can't actually come and see it, we
Yeah.
we work out the design and get a sign off, and then only go about even producing it.
Okay.
So, and when before we ship it, we get it fully assembled, and we check it. We send them photographs of the fully assembled product and say, this is how it's come out, right? And then once they're fully satisfied, that's when we send it, right?
And this is
So.
probably like an architecture client, or is it?
Okay, so we have, so there again, we have a broad spectrum of clients. So we have people who come approach us for just one piece of furniture,
Okay.
and then there are some customers who approach us for a few objects per se, right? So there'll be some furniture, maybe some doors, maybe just a kitchen, and there would be that sort of a package. And then there is the third kind, where we do the entire project for them, where there's the design and build. So in a circumstance like that, it's not just a factory visit that suffices. There's a lot more than that. I think you have to own that relationship when you have to do a project, when you have to do the entire house, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes it takes as long as 2 years to even understand and design the right things for them, and we almost become like best buddies by the time we
Yes.
get to a point where we do this. So it's not just the factory visit that matters. So to that extent, we've had some clients, and if you're asking me if people can walk into the factory today, in today's situation, may not be, right. We might try and do this as virtually as possible, but I see this in very positive light, because during the lockdown we had a lot of inquiries. There were a lot of people who saw us on Instagram, for example, and they said, I want this table. I want to, once the lockdown is over, I want to come to the factory. In fact, they're very enthusiastic, right? So, we tell them, yeah, just hold your horses. We can't do this right away. Just wait it out. We'll probably, we can have a rendezvous probably in June or July, right?
Okay.
So, just wait it out. Don't hurry. That's probably what we tell. So,
I think it's pretty great that you have customers already knocking on your door.
yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
okay.
And except for, we haven't really gotten into any sort of marketing campaign so far, right? We don't, it's completely word of mouth, it's organic. Someone refers us to somebody, and, we get a call and they say,
Yeah.
I've been hearing about your work. It's really nice. So I checked you guys on Instagram. So I want to do something with you. That
Yeah.
sort of thing. So we've had calls from probably all over the country, and we've had some people inquiring from across the globe as well.
Okay.
There were some people who in fact wanted to meet us before the lockdown, but unfortunately things shut for a bit. But they're still persistent. They want to reach out to us when things are slightly better. So I think what is important at this time is to stay optimistic, and we've and stay as sagacious, and look at the bigger picture, right?
Okay.
In fact, as an organization, in the last 7 years, we've seen several challenges. Like within
Okay.
about 1.5 years of setting up, we had the floods in 2015. So
Yes, I remember. Yeah.
our operations at that time came to a grinding halt. In fact, our machinery our factory was submerged in 15 feet of water. So our machines were completely conked off. We had lost, we had to completely do a lot of electric wiring. We lost some computers, that sort of machine. But I think one of the most important things that has stood steadfast by us is the wood, right? I think I think you don't need any greater encouragement or a testimony to go about doing what you do when you have a material like teak wood standing for you all the time, right? So I think I look at the way I look at the COVID situation
Yeah,
itself
yeah.
is more like a long vacation, right? We are stepping back and doing things like we had a long vacation and now let's get to work. That's the MO we are on, and I think
Okay.
very soon we'll get back to our feet and into complete normalcy.
Okay, that's a nice positive message to send out. And I think I remember you and Prem talking to me about how things were at your factory after the floods, because I think I met you soon after
Soon
the
after,
floods.
I think that's right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, and that was when that's when I mean, you pointed at your conference table, I think, and said this entire table was underwater at that
Yeah,
time, and look at it
I'm
now.
glad you remember that. That
No,
table is it's still in the same shape. I mean, there's nothing that's changed about it. We've not even done a touch up or polish or anything. It's just the way it is. So
I I remember that very clearly, and I remember the furniture very clearly as well. And
yeah.
we just lost power here, so my glasses are fogging up.
Oh,
So you said you've never done any marketing and just were relied on word of mouth and let your work speak for itself, right?
that's right.
But now, are you planning to do any kind of marketing? Are
Yes.
you planning to
So
reach
we've
out?
been thinking about this because we need to. We've been thinking about reaching a slightly larger audience as well. So we've been working on a website, and it will be out there soon. So because one of the other things that we have to keep in mind is we've been working on so far we've constructed about five more than 500 unique objects, right? None
Okay.
of them repeating. More than the maximum we've produced of one object is probably in 10 numbers. We've never got into a sort of a mass production thought process at all. We've been completely bespoke, and to this day that's how we've been. But from a slightly thinking in terms of from a slightly more economic standpoint, it is important to have that boutique and bespoke experience as well. But through the website, we're trying to standardize a few objects, a few products that can be, maybe we keep revising it for every quarter or every 6 month sort of a periodic thing. But we're thinking of coming up with a line of seasonal furniture which people can sort of have access through
Oh, that's good.
anywhere in the globe through the website.
And that's going to be available off the shelf, or is that still going to be customized?
See, there will be some level of customization to any furniture that we make, right?
Okay.
Because I can't say I make only 8x3 tables and you better have space for an 8x3. I can't say that, right?
Right.
So there will definitely be more than customization. I think the right word to use here would be maybe it's a few choices, right?
Okay.
So the design would be pretty much the same. So if you're going to choose, let's say, a cassette table, right? We have
Yeah.
a product called the cassette table. So there, um, uh, we might have, depending on the proportion of the table, we might come up with 2-3 sizes. So you
Okay.
can work out and see what size fits best in your space, right?
Okay.
And if you're going to go for a single seat lounge chair or a sofa, you will definitely have some options on customizing the upholstery,
Right.
right? And we also have something called the Pico series. So we have small tables, we have large tables, we have a Pico table with a little drawer in the bottom.
Yeah.
We have a Pico table with just a ledge. So those sort of options can be made available. right?
Okay.
So I would say more than customization, these are a few choices which you will have. So
Okay.
once you just say, yeah, this is exactly what I want, what we would have in terms of components will be put together at that point and finished for you, right? So in a sense, it is actually customized for you.
Okay. No, that I think that's good, because people who if they're going to be buying it by looking at your website and your Instagram, I think they will also like to know, now that you've said it, that there are choices to fit
Yeah.
their space.
Yeah, that's right.
So now I think we're coming up to the time to wrap up. Um, is there anything in particular you have been working on in the lockdown that you weren't able to work on before that?
So in terms of, see, personally, there have been a lot of things I've been able to do. Like I've been delving a little bit more on my hobbies, like playing the piano. I practice regularly. I during the lockdown, that's something I was able to do. I was able to do a little bit of gardening, and a lot of learning. Right. So I've been looking at. A lot of simple things like just reorganizing the home, right? I've been cleaning my wardrobe, right? So that the very act of the whole cleaning process has given me a much better idea of, the importance of doing certain things in a wardrobe in a particular way. In the takeoff point, I've actually been reading up a little bit of Marie Kondo and her methods of organizing, and
Yeah.
that is actually, I think, very important. That I have a lot of takeoff points from there to designing a wardrobe, right?
Okay.
It's important to um, design efficiently, so that is something, and fat-free design. So that's something that I've really sort of been very conscious about during this lockdown. And there have been a few. I've been for a long time wanting to develop a series of furniture that's as ephemeral as possible, right? When I say ephemeral, it's easy to move around, right? It's really
Okay.
lightweight. You can just, just wrap it up, just fold it, and just carry it wherever you want, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of my friends have been having babies, so I've been designing some cradles and cribs, and that's been a lot of fun. In fact, a cradle has a completely different set of ergonomics and anthropometry to that you need to understand to come up with. You need to keep in mind the parent that will be using it and the child that will be sleeping in it.
Yes.
So that's something I've really had a lot of fun working on. And of course, as a team, we've been, the website is something we've been working on. We've used this time to work on the website, and a
Yep.
fair bit of structuring work has also been happening. That's something which we want to implement.
Yeah.
So we've been working on that as well.
Okay, that's pretty great. So why don't could you just tell the people watching what's the best way that they can check out your furniture, and if they want to get in touch, how do they do that?
So we are actually, in fact, our website has got Prem's number, so he's just a phone call away. You can always write to us, and we are on Instagram. Very soon our website will be out, so you can reach us there as well. And I think we are fairly very well connected in today's world. It's not so difficult to access somebody when you've decided to, reach out to them. So yeah, it's all there.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So I think this is a good time to draw this to a close. Carola, thank you so much. I think this interview was you went really deep, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people watching would have had a lot to take away from it.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Shrina. Thank you for this opportunity. It was lovely talking to you.
Yes, likewise.
Yes.
And thanks so much. And
Thank you.
to the viewers, thank you so much for watching as well. To watch more interviews as part of the What Happens Next Instagram series, please follow at Shreya Nagarajan Singh, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.